Hello and welcome to Spirit Pig. Inspired by the mission 7 billion fulfilled people, I track down the greatest thought leaders on the planet and interview them about happiness and fulfillment. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Wallace J. Nichols. Jay is a scientist, activist, and New York Times best-selling author of the book Blue Mind, the surprising science that shows how being near, in, on, or underwater can make you happier, healthier, more connected, and better at what you do. He's the co-author of a number of organisations that work to help inspire a deeper connection with nature and create inventive solutions to pressing issues. He's the author or co-author of more than 50 scientific papers and reports, and has recently been honoured by the Fijian Prime Minister with the Champion of Change Award. Jay, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Really looking forward to our conversation.
I was thinking to myself earlier, like, what would be like the best way to prepare for this? And apart from sort of jumping in with all the research and like watching like what you've been up to, I thought I was going to have a bit more of a hands-on with this one. So I moved to Amsterdam about 8 months ago, and so I had a little 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just quiet time by the water, by the canal. I listened to Enya, Caribbean Blue, and then I also, beforehand, I felt like a little walk, and I thought I'd go for some ice cream. But as I got to the ice cream place, I actually decided, I'm not sure if this one's such a good one, but I chose sorbet instead of ice cream because I thought it's got a bit more water in it. So I was trying to tick off as many like boxes as possible.
Well, I have to say, I've never been interviewed by anyone more prepared than you. That's
as in, yeah, screw the research. Like Enya and a sorbet, like you don't get better than that.
Well, I would say that's usually where these conversations end up, is right where we're started. People at the end of a conversation, at the end of an interview, say, "What should people do?" And you've just started the conversation with "What should people do?" And the answer is you don't need to read all the research. You don't even need to read my book. You just need to open to the last page, which says "Get in the water." That's like the whole thing right there is do what you just described. Just go make it a priority if you can daily, certainly weekly, but just go down to the water and listen to Semenya and look at the water or paddle on it, jump in it if you can. That's really the take home message is to get in touch with your water more, even if it's sorbet and it makes you happy. I guess that's a good thing. Yeah, not so complicated.
Neuroscientists around the world have been examining our brains on chocolate, our brains on iPhone, our brains on sex, music, red wine. But until reasonably recently in the whole conversation, they're quite late to explore the connection between our brains and the ocean, weren't they?
That's right. It's kind of like nature was last on the list. I know if you can imagine, the neuroscientists had this list that they shared with each other of all the cool things they could study. Like you said, chocolate and sex and music and happiness and anger and all these emotions and all this. There's even a book about the neuroscience of magic. So how it describes how magicians trick us into believing they can do things that they can't. And the way they do it is they understand our brain better than we do, which gives them the edge. Marketers do the exact same thing, right? So it's sleight of hand, it's illusionism. And so there's a book about the neuroscience of sleight of hand, basically. And there wasn't, for a very long time, a book about nature in the brain, or about water in particular in the brain. I wanted to read it. I didn't really want to write Blue Mind. I wanted to read Blue Mind. And I couldn't find it. And then I couldn't find anybody who would write it. And so that's sort of the third choice, was to buckle down and do the research and do the interviewing and write the book so that I could read it, I suppose. But I'm just as surprised as you that water would be so low on the list, considering that we live on a water planet. We are first and foremost made of water. We all spent the first 9 months of our lives living underwater. I don't know if you remember that, but you did. But solid, you never got out of the water for 9 months. You were in the dark, underwater for 9 months, swimming around. And we are water. Every organism on the planet is a water organism essentially. Um, so yeah, it's kind of surprising that I had to write the book, I guess, is the at the end of the day. But beyond that, it's an important conversation, I think, to take to people, to have conversations with people like you, to reach a new audience, to make them kind of go, wow, that's really interesting. Hadn't thought of that. I do need to get in the water more and have more fun in the water.
I mean,
Yeah.
the idea of being in nature, being by the water makes you feel better. I mean, that idea when you kind of say it like that, kind of feels intuitive. It feels like, of course. What is when you're researching this book and you were, like you said, you were interviewing other people and you're looking at like the hard science, not just like, oh yeah, it's nice to be in nature, but actually breaking it down and seeing the science behind it. What is something, if that idea of being in nature makes you feel better is intuitive, what is something maybe that you came across that maybe most of the public don't know, or that was maybe a bit surprising even to you?
I think the connection between water and creativity was one of the coolest pieces of the story. And yeah, water makes you feel good. That's a pretty straightforward, pretty intuitive, hard to argue idea. But as a scientist, I want to know why. Scientists relentlessly ask why. Not everybody wants to know why. Some people prefer leaving things mysterious or magical. But I think knowing why is really useful, particularly since most people, I've never met somebody that said, "Yeah, I'm spending as much time as I need in the water or near the water." Everybody I meet wishes they had a little more time or a lot more time to spend near, in, on, or under the water they love.
Mm.
So we all need encouragement. We all need reminders. I need to be reminded to just like break away, stop work, go get in the ocean. So that's one part of it. But one of the most interesting pieces of what I learned was about creativity and how water can, by helping us relax, it can help us think, and not just to do math, but to solve problems, to think outside the box, to become more innovative, even more collaborative, and that's really important. So understanding the role of water in the creative process, I started looking around for artists and musicians and entrepreneurs and scientists who had written about or spoken about or had an experience that fit into this box. And there's so many creative people in all disciplines that say that they had their breakthrough moment, or they go to the water to boost their creativity. So 2 examples. Pharrell Williams, the musician, you might be familiar with his songs. Pretty well known guy. Makes his living from his creativity, you can say, right? That's, if he was not creative, he would not have a career. He says that he gets his creativity from water, from growing up by the water, growing up by the Atlantic Ocean in Virginia Beach. You look it up, just look up Pharrell Williams on water, and you'll find him describing how water gave him his creativity. And then obviously he did a lot with his creativity, made a career of it. There's another person, the great neurologist Oliver Sacks, who passed away last year. Brilliant intellect, one of the greatest thinkers, wonderful writer, and kind of a mentor in a way. And he said he got his best ideas while swimming. And so here's a guy who made his living off of great ideas, just stacks of great ideas. That's defined his career. And he says he got his best ideas while he was swimming. And that's just 2 examples. But if I would just say, if you're ever feeling stuck in your thinking, just go for a walk by the water, go for a paddle, go for a sail, go for a swim, go for a float. Um, Put on water sound if the actual water isn't around, and let yourself get washed away in it. But keep a notebook handy because you will have an idea that you want to remember. I guarantee it. Um, Call me if that doesn't work, and I'll come up with a better idea for you. But it's astounding. So that's been one of the coolest pieces of this conversation. And and creativity, we've got a lot of big problems to solve. You know, we need creativity. We need new ideas. And so if water can be a source of creativity, well, that's good. That's really good.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, you described it as we're living in sort of the golden age of neuroscience. Why? I mean, and this generation is the first generation almost with I think the expression was a user's guide to the human brain. Could you maybe just explain what right now what we're living in is why this is such a golden age?
Yeah. So in the medical fields, the research on the brain it's been going on for a long time, but the technology and the tools now available to us that allow us to look inside, to see what's going on in real time, to analyze the flow of electricity and oxygen in the brain, to look at ever smaller processes, to look at the neurochemistry in amazing detail with
through
some serious
MRI
rigor.
scans and all like literally all like the machines now we can actually physically see down to the neurons.
Exactly. So fMRIs, EEG, so measuring electricity, measuring oxygen, but also just measuring the chemistry. And then you look at neurosurgery and the ability to kind of help put things back together is a function of understanding where things are happening. And then you take it outside of the human realm. We do still experiment a lot on non-human creatures, whether they're rats or sea slugs, in order to understand how neurons work. But our understanding of the neuron at the cellular level, our understanding of the brain and the different regions of the brain, and then our understanding of our entire nervous system and its integrated function throughout our bodies, it's really advancing quite quickly. There's still there's mostly stuff we don't know. It's the tip of the iceberg, but it's really exciting. And I compare it to when I was younger, medical research was obsessed with the human heart. Heart health was a big deal. We kind of discovered that the heart is important to being healthy, and people started to become a little more obsessed with heart healthy food, exercise. I can actually remember when exercise was not recommended by doctors. They just didn't talk about it. And then all of a sudden there was this research that said, hey, exercise is good for your health. And so now there's the recommendation that you exercise a certain amount every week, that cardio is good, and that keeping your heart healthy is important. That was actually a breakthrough piece of science, or a whole realm of science. The American Heart Association, as an advocacy group. So that is happening now for the human brain. You will see more and more brain healthy items on the menu in the supermarket. Brain enhancing drinks. 5 years ago, you didn't see on a label of a drink that it was anything related to brain enhancing. But now, whether it's omega-3s or different kind of chemicals that boost brain function, you see that on the shelf. So that's changing. That's just part of it. That's sort of the consumer goods side of it. But all of it together is pretty fascinating, and I think it also connects to this concept of neuroliteracy. So that each of us should become, like you said, familiar with the user's guide to our own brain. Um, I think about, if you ever shopped at IKEA for a piece of furniture and you got it home and it's all in pieces, and imagine trying to figure it out without the guide,
Sure.
without that cartoon instruction sheet. You'd be in trouble, probably. There'd just be parts and pieces and holes and boards and stuff. Well, that's kind of how we've been operating with the human brain. Nobody is, in school, nobody says, "Hey, this is how your brain works.
Mm.
This is how you can hack it so it works better. Here are some tips."
That's what I love, because I think having conversations like this, I find them so fascinating, because it's almost like you've almost got like a toolbox, and from each interview you learn something different. So, for example, say you got a toolbox for happiness. Now, through this conversation, a new tool is knowing about water, and so that's like it's not the whole picture. That's not like the game changer. It's not everything. You've got all these things: presence, gratitude, family, relationships, purpose. You've got all these different tools, but now you know about like water, for example. Then okay, that's something which it's now going to be front and center. It's going to be front of the mind, which I've actually got to be giving it its weight to, and without having to like go into all like the different research, just to kind of give people just the bird's eye view. Like, what are some of the big things that the research is showing? For example, you're near water, cortisol levels go down, so that's stress hormone. Like, what other things? You talked about creativity. What kind of things water are the health benefits?
Yeah. So I think the best way to understand blue mind and the role of water is to start with what I call red mind. And red mind is the opposite of blue mind. It's quite necessary. We do need to get excited. We do need to get angry. We do need to get fired up to get things done, to survive, to run away. The fight or flight response is natural. It's incredibly important for survival. But in our modern society, that fight or flight button is being pressed way more than it needs to. So you open your email, you open a text message, you turn on the TV, you look online, and there's something that's meant to shock you. That's sort of how our media works, and it's coming from all over the world. So we're overstimulated. The level of psychological stress that we each carry is higher. There's just a lot of input. There's a lot of sensory input. There's a lot more information coming into your brain than your parents had to deal with, and their parents and their parents, right? So you're consuming more information in a day than humans, hundreds of years ago consumed maybe in a month or a year. Just think about that. You're processing all of that, and you're making sense of it, and you're figuring out what's useful and what's not. You're filtering it. All right, that's our normal base state. And it's not all good. It's not all good for us. It does break us down. It does stress us out. It does tire us out. And we aren't at our best creatively. We aren't at our best in terms of relationships. It puts a strain on things that we agree are important to us. So that's red mind. It's normal. It's chronic. It starts when you wake up in the morning and goes till you put your phone next to your head at night. And then it starts all over again when you wake up and look at your phone and it's on, right? Screens everywhere. Blue mind is when you step away from that. And water helps us make that break more quickly. You can do, mindfulness meditation. You can exercise. But if you add water to it, it works better and faster. So if you go for a jog, that's good. If you go for a jog by the river, it's probably going to get you further into blue mind, more quickly into that relaxed state. If you want to sit in the middle of your room by that plant and meditate, that would be nice. But if you sit by the water and meditate, you might get to where you want to get a little more quickly. And so what happens when we step up to the water, or a proxy for it, is it frees up bandwidth. So visually, the information coming in that's being processed by the visual centers of our brain is minimized, simplified, doesn't go away, but looking out at water is interesting, but it's simple, right? So now you're not processing words, you're not processing stuff coming off of screens. Auditorily, it's also simplified. The sound of water, the sound of a creek, a river, or the waves lapping on the beach. Again, it's interesting, but it isn't requiring a lot of attention. It's not requiring us to focus. There's no language in that noise. There's no jarring in that noise. There's no shock. It's calming. And then somatically, so our bodies, if you're in the water and you want to be in the water and you're comfortable, then gravity goes away. You're floating. And the parts of your brain that need to coordinate those 200 muscles that you're using right now to sit upright in that chair, they get a break as well. Those parts, so all those parts of your brain are getting some bandwidth back. And what happens is your brain doesn't just go to sleep. It doesn't turn off. It doesn't just take a little nap. It does other things that it hasn't been able to do because you've been so focused. You've been up all in the front of your brain, your prefrontal cortex. So in the here and the now and the analysis and the processing, the worrying, the second guessing, that's where we live most of the time. You get out to the water and more of your brain is activated in a more distributed fashion, switch to a different mode. And that turns out it's good at other things. It's not good at focusing on math problems, but it is good at creativity. So when you're in that mode, you have those aha moments, you have those insights, you make connections. People say, I just wrote a poem and it just kind of dropped into my mind, almost complete. That's kind of the stuff that happens. When you're urgently trying to weave through traffic, your brain's not writing a poem. And so it's not all about poetry, obviously. It's about, creativity and innovation and connection. But that's kind of, the walkthrough from red mind to blue mind. The third mind that I describe in my book is I call gray mind. And that is the kind of numbed out, indifferent, so like mildly depressed, just, I don't care.
The apathy.
I don't care. Apathetic. Yeah. Pretty useless. That red mind is useful. Blue mind is useful. Gray mind is just sort of not so helpful at all. It's more of a dysfunction. And so blue mind can help you pull out of that as well. So I try to steer clear of any kind of, silver bullet health claims. Sure. Or anything related, like the word cure or healing. But what we do know is that being near, in, on, and underwater can help the things that we know already work. So if you're taking medication for stress, if you spend time by water, your medication will work better, and maybe you can dial back on the amount, the dosage. So if you have a lot of anxiety, if you develop your relationship with water, it may help you manage your anxiety, perhaps to the point that you can dial back on some of the other things that you may have been doing for that anxiety, which may include, drinking alcohol, may include pharmaceuticals and other things. So, I don't want to make big health claims, but I do recognize that in a complementary sense, blue mind touches a lot of realms.
Well, building on a couple of those things, I saw, I mentioned it to you a couple of days ago. I watched the short documentary Resurface, in which you feature, and where they take it's focused around army vets and veterans who have, from amputees to PTSD, and actually the rehabilitation and the healing qualities of actually being out in the surf, being out in the water. And I appreciate that you don't want to use these words like sort of like these big claims, magic pills, but just from just a visual thing, somebody would walk into the water in one state, even if it's just a temporary and emotional state, and they would come out a different way. And there definitely was, even just in a short amount of time, a transformation. And so it was. It was extremely powerful. Just even without like the big claims, it does this X, Y, and Z. It just seeing somebody walk into the water and come out in just a different place, even someone who's suffering from severe PTSD, it was great to see.
Yeah, and I could tell, you could tell, that film tells many stories, many anecdotes of exactly that. And what's starting to happen is those anecdotes are being collated into long-term studies, and those results are being published, and it's promising. It's really cool to see what works, and even if Blue Mind can help a lot of people feel 1% better. So if Blue Mind can help 1 million people feel 1%, just 1% better, that's huge, because it's free. It's there. The water is out there. Go. And we're not selling tickets. You don't need to read the book. If you want to, get it from the library. We're not selling books. We're sharing a big idea. And so really, if it helps millions of people feel 1% better, hell yeah, that's a good deal. If it helps people who need it the most, so like veterans, first responders with post-traumatic stress, kids that are dealing with high levels of anxiety, if it helps them get through their lives, that's great. That is truly, really awesome. And if our job right here is to remind people, if one person listens and says, wow, I used to love being in the water when I was a kid. I'm really stressed out. I bet if I get back in the water, my stress will go down and I'll be a nicer person. I'll be a happier person. My relationships will be better. If that's what they walk away from listening to this conversation, if wow, that's one life that's improved. And so, yeah, you don't have to go too far to find the evidence that this idea is real. And I love it when the studies come together and provide robust evidence that changes our systems, that changes the way we teach, maybe changes the way doctors and nurses do their job. And that's the long-term goal. Yeah. If water can help people be more creative, can help reduce stress, can help people manage pain, can help people through the end of their lives, that's just one more set of reasons that we should make sure the water is not polluted, that there's access, and that we restore the basic integrity of our waterways. So that's kind of, not everybody cares about the environmental stuff, but that's where I'm coming from. So
no, I love it, because
I do.
Because it's one thing to often when we see sort of when you see things that are kind of, it's often easy to point to like, oh, that's not right, or this isn't right, or that's not right, but that alone, unless it's kind of matched with like sort of a compelling vision of actually something to aim towards, suddenly you can have like a lot of energy and emotion going behind something, but then it fizzles out because you don't have that compelling vision. Like, talking about that vision, can you maybe like paint a picture for me of, if we can all get our shit together, like what kind of vision do you feel is possible?
Yeah. So to your point, I think the environmental movement is perhaps rightly characterized as always saying no and always telling us what not to do, perhaps making us feel bad about what we're doing, maybe some guilt, and then a lot of facts, a lot of factoids. So that's generally what the environmental movement is known for, is being kind of like you're the no people. You're telling us all the things we're not allowed to do that we should feel bad about. And this allows us to have a yes vision, to be able to say, wow, I want to think about what I want and what it looks like. What is what does my day look like when I have my blue mind on? I walk out the door and perhaps I'm going to get a cup of coffee and I'm going to drink it overlooking the river, maybe by the canal, maybe down by the beach. I might go for a surf. I might go for a swim. I might go for a paddle. I might just listen to the sound of the water at sunrise. And then I go throughout my day, perhaps during my lunch break at work, I sit next to an urban fountain and just enjoy the soundscape of the water falling. That brings me a little bit closer together with my friend. So we lean a little bit closer to each other. We have a private conversation that's facilitated by the sound of water. It creates like a privacy bubble. That's my lunch break. And then at the end of the day, I walk home along the water and enjoy the walk home from work and go and get my family, and we go have a meal overlooking water. Or we take a walk at sunset and we check out the water, or we go for another swim or another paddle. And so that's sort of a vision for a healthy, well-designed blue community that says this water is important not just for commerce, it's important for emotional, mental health, physical health, and we want to make sure our citizens have access to it. And a lot of communities around the world are embracing that vision and bringing their waterfronts back to life. They're fixing the access points. They're fixing the water quality. Cities like Pittsburgh that used to be known for the poor health of their rivers are now embracing their waterfront. There's an organization there called River Life that is all about getting people down to the river, on the water, changing the conversation about the value of the river. And it's working. I mean, people are proud of their rivers, and they're holding weddings down by the river. And 20 years ago, if you said I'm gonna have a wedding down by the river, people would say, "Ew, gross. Why would you do that?" And now it's like the cool thing. So you can just imagine how that can transform urban life, to have a waterway in your city that you love, that's where you go to start the day, to end the day, to celebrate, to pop the question, to think more clearly, to cry, to play, all these things that make our life better when you have some great water available.
What does a fulfilled life mean to you?
This is what my father taught us, and he didn't teach it sort of through words. He taught us through his actions, and he passed away last year on Earth Day. So we just passed a year, and basically, a good life, fulfilled life, is one where you're born, you give everything you have, and then you die. That's it. That's what he taught us. So I'm in the middle of giving as much as I possibly can, and in every way I possibly can, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, physically, raising my daughters, my relationship with my wife. I have a huge family of, adopted and biological and foster brothers and sisters. And there's the environment that I care so much about, animals and the ocean. The more I give, the better I feel. And so my dad was right. And it's pretty simple.
I love that.
So
it reminds me of something I heard the other day, where it's like, you've been given this life and your job is to pay it back with interest. And so it's like, okay, I've got this life and I'm going to get it back and some. I'm going to give it some serious interest. So I love that idea.
Yeah. It's easy to remember too. Kind of, if you, when in doubt, give more.
Now, this last question it's completely I mean, I don't think I've ever been so certain I know the answer. I mean, it's null and void. It's I always ask at the end, what is one thing our listeners can start doing today that will have a positive impact on their lives? But I'm going to guess it's go to water, be near water, have access to water, something.
Yeah, I would say that's it. But I'll add something to that. Get in the water, get to the water, and take somebody with you. Find somebody that hasn't been to the water or hasn't been in a long time, and just grab their hand and drag them to the water with you. I guarantee they will thank you for it, and you will enjoy the experience as well. But we all need guides. We all need encouragement, and it's nice to spend time at the water with other people. So whether you're paddling or walking by the water or going for a surf or just going to listen to it, just grab somebody. Could be a stranger, and just say, "Hey, I'm going to the water. You look like you might need a little blue mind," and then just do it. It's not that complicated, and you might feel weird doing it, but you get over it fast. Yeah.
After this, I'm going to go down to the canal and go and ask, go and get a date. Be like, "Hi, do you want to come to the water?" They're like, "Leave me alone. Fuck off."
Okay, so do it. Then you need to report back to me and let me know how that goes.
Okay. All right. So, what time is it now? It's 6 o'clock. Okay. After this conversation, I'm going to go and ask a girl to the water.
And it's just what? Why?
No. I'm like, it's blue mind. It's not red mind. Get out of red mind. It's blue mind.
Yeah,
what do you mean blue? What? What do you mean? Leave me alone.
Maybe onto something.
How can people find out more about you and your work?
Look up Blue Mind, or look up Brain on Water, or whatever your path into this is. You'll find a lot of resources. There's some great work happening at the University of Exeter Medical School on blue health, if you're interested in the research. And you don't need to go to my website, but if you want more information about what I'm doing, it's all there. But the best stuff is happening out all over the world. So many organizations committed to protecting waterways are getting the idea that the emotional component is important, and they're doing it. So, that's the other thing I'd say is help that process along. If you're involved in a charity that works on water, make sure that they're building Blue Mind into their messaging, because it really is it supercharges our effort when we add in this emotional piece. So that would be my suggestion. Don't go to my website. Go to the website of your favorite water organization and help them update with these ideas.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Have a great evening. I want to hear about the water trip.
I'll send you an email.
Yeah, excellent.